I've recently watched through all the seasons of The Walking Dead, but now it is time to pick the best 10 episodes of all time. In at number 10, Rest in Peace, Season 11, Episode 24.
I wouldn't be the man I am today if I hadn't met you.
Yeah, for me, this has to be my top 10 anyways, because I think this was a fantastic end for the show and a great way to end the big story of The Walking Dead without including all the spin-offs and all that shit. If you wanted to go, right, I'm walking away from The Walking Dead universe, this is the perfect opportunity to walk away and go, yep, I've tuned into The Walking Dead, The Walking Dead's done. I'm not really bothered about spin-offs if that is you, but if not, then you've got the spin-offs to enjoy afterwards, of closing those last few chapters. But this shows a closing of the main chapter of the Walking Dead universe, and I love it. I think having the drama that you do of Judith having emergency surgery after being shot in the previous episode, absolutely key. You've also got the drama of Commonwealth being taken over by variant zombies and normal zombies, and looks like there's no way out, no pun intended for the episode that we're going to talk about later, but there's legit no escape for them at all, and it looks that fucking dramatic. It looks amazing. Then you've got this added layer of emotional stuff when we see Rosita getting bit in a dramatic fashion. I think all these little jigsaw pieces coming together absolutely make this episode a must watch and an absolute key episode in the Walking Dead universe, because that dramatic moment shows that Rosita had to be killed off and everybody else gets a happy ending. But for me, it was just a fantastic ending just to leave that there. And also at the end of this season, we also see Rick and Michonne teaser trailer for their TV show as well. That is fantastic, and we see Daryl going away as well. So we obviously knew there were spin-off shows for them two characters, and I think it was a fantastic way to end this particular season and a fantastic way to end The Walking Dead. In at number 9, The Calm Before the Storm, Season 9, Episode 15. Yes, this is on my top 10 simply for the fact of the impact of this moment of Tara, Henry, and of Enid all being killed and her heads being put on spikes because Alpha's group is on the rise. For some reason, they're still put on this festival with all this at rise, and the Kingdoms obviously invited Alexandria and Hilltop to both come down to help trade. And Alpha, like she is, nobody knows what she really looks like from Hilltop, whatever, so she's able to disguise herself amongst the people and kidnap those 3 people and chop their heads off. The brutalness can only be described as Negan-esque, that evilness, and it felt like the major threat that we've been needing since probably Negan and the Saviors, and I don't think we'd had that level of threat for a few seasons, because obviously Season 8 was just the war. And the last time we really saw this level of threat was in Season 7. So it was great having this in Season 9 and really showing, oh, The Walking Dead isn't finished after Rick's demise in Season 9, Episode 5. So to me, I think this was a great way of showing we're not finished, we're carrying on, and the impact on the future of The Walking Dead of this moment was massive. In at number 8, Too Far Gone, Season 4, Episode 8.
But we can still come back. We're not too far gone. We get to come back.
For me, Too Far Gone is a great episode, which, to be fair, should have closed out a season, because it was the return of the governor after his really massive run in Season 3, being this first real massive tyrant type of villain, and for me, turns absolutely more mental than we saw him at the end of Season 3 after he killed his own people. I think this was like the perfect way to have the last Rick versus the governor battle, as the governor had created his own little camp, and you're thinking that he's moved on and away from them, but he's noticed something Rick's got, and that is the prison, and he knows that that is a way to help protect his people. And even Rick tried to say there's plenty of room here in the prison for all those people and yourself, but he turns that offer down and takes it by brute force with a tank of all things, and then battle commences, and this is one hell of a battle between the governor and between Rick, getting them to fight between each other. We're getting to see the revenge on each other. I think it's a fantastic war battle, and it should have been a season finale. It really should have, but then you wouldn't have what the end of Season 4 would be, of the terminus and all that sort of stuff that happens later on. So for me, I think the breakdown of the prison probably happened in a point where you weren't expecting it, but it works and it's an impactful moment, which causes the group to have to leave the prison in which they'd been at the prison since the start of season 3. Before we jump back into this video, guys, please do us a massive favour and smash that subscribe button, because you do not want to miss a thing this week, next week, and the week after, because we've got tons and tons of content planned for you guys, and you can do us a massive favour by smashing that subscribe button, joining the community, getting updates to all the latest videos, from the YouTube shorts to the actual videos. It is well worth it, completely free, and you will not regret it. In at number 7, No Sanctuary, season 5, episode 1.
Compound bow and a machete with a red handle. That's what I'm gonna use to kill you.
Yep, for me this has got to be on the list as well, because this showed how together the group actually was, and that nothing was going to bring them apart or tear them apart. Because to be fair, Terminus seemed to be a place for all these different groups of people from the prison to finally reunite and be a family again. And this was a way of following the tracks. It was all the way out through the show, all the way out through those last few episodes of season 4, of everyone following those tracks and leading to what seemed to be their new safe haven. But when that new safe haven turns into a load of people that want to eat them and are literally cannibalists, you get this awesome moment then of seeing Rick come out on top again, because this is in the midst of Rick being an absolute mad bastard and changing from just being a leader to being a leader that will do absolutely anything to stop anybody in his track. And I think this was peak Rick taking down Terminus with his group. And we're also getting to see how badass Carol is as well, because she helps them escape. And even though there was a little bit of beef between her and Rick, because Rick found out that she'd killed Tyrus's bird in the prison, I think it was really interesting seeing how those two would mix. And they just came together and was like, look, we've forgiven all that. We now need to get on with this now. And I think this was absolutely fantastic. Perfect start for season 5, thinking what's going to happen with Terminus. They might have been able to drag this out a few more episodes, but this whole episode put together felt dramatic. It felt like a perfect advertisement for what The Walking Dead is. You had the zombies obviously in there, but you had this idea of this new group that they'd had to come across again and defeat in this sort of manner. In at number 6, a season 4 episode 16.
Ah, sport.
Speaking of Terminus, this is obviously another one of those out of the 2-parter. Obviously, this is the first part, and this one is where we get to see Brutal Rick strike. Because obviously, we've seen the prison fall down at the beginning of season 4. Now, the last few episodes before this one have been following the tracks on these little side quests, following these little groups of part of the prison. But now this one is where we're seeing them all closing down and finally getting to what is Terminus, this new safe haven. But before we get there, Rick has to go through one of his toughest challenges yet, because at the start of the season, or near the start of the season after the prison break, no pun intended, and that's not meant to be about the TV show, you see that Rick has to kill somebody to help to escape the house where he'd just fallen asleep and had a nap. And in killing somebody, those same people, those biker gang, track Rick down throughout the entirety of the season up until this moment and put him in an awful predicament where he and Michonne and his son are about to be killed by this gang. But they want to kill and abuse Rick's son beforehand, so he has to sit there and watch, for basically as a punishment for killing one of his men. However, Rick absolutely does a number on him and bites his throat out. And this shows his brutalness of doing absolutely anything for the people around him and doing anything to survive. This is the new Rick that we see season 5. And I think this particular version of Rick is the best version of Rick, because he is hardcore, he is badass, and he just doesn't give a fuck and doesn't trust absolutely anybody. And this then obviously spikes them on their last journey towards Terminus, and it leaves it on a cliffhanger where it takes you to the next episode. And this particular moment is more impactful than a lot of the moments that we've already said are impactful, simply for the fact that this creates a version of Rick more brutal than any of the versions of Rick that we've actually seen in the Walking Dead universe. In at number 5, No Way Out, Season 6, Episode 9. This is a perfect advertisement for what The Walking Dead is about. Zombies taking over settlements. It is about Rick trying to get all his people away safely. It is about trying to kill these so-called zombies as well, or walkers, should I say. And it's all about survival and trying their best to survive. And disagreements happen amongst that time as well. And all is in this particular episode. And just before getting on to that, this is the first episode we see Negan, the gang, come together. As we see a small group of Negan that try to stop Daryl and Abraham and all the others coming back from a supply run. And they want to hand over their stuff and take them to their settlement. However, they take things into their own hands, and as Daryl goes back to behind his van, he pulls out the RPG that Abraham finds and kills them all, setting up something and foreshadowing something that would later impact them later down the line. But going on to the main thing about the zombies taking over the settlement, I think this was fantastic because you saw Rick really taking control, trying to save his people and save his family by walking them through a herd of zombies covered in zombie guts. And obviously shit's not going to go as easy as that, is it? Because obviously one of the people that he's trying to transport is somebody that he sort of fancies in a way, which is Jesse, and his son basically is the one that, you know, alerts them to the fact that they're not zombies and walkers. As he just starts freaking out in the midst of all these walkers around him, he freaks out, gets mauled, so does Jesse, and now there's a bit of an incident, put it that way. And Ron, who is also her son, picks up the gun and tries to shoot Rick for the revenge from earlier on in the show, where Rick basically killed his dad. So yeah, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to get revenge on you now, but then ends up being stabbed by Michonne, but the gun goes off anyways, shoots Carl in the face. The drama is on next level sort of stuff, and is a fantastic way to sort of go, oh my god, what's going to happen now? Is Carl going to die? He can't die. He's been a legacy character for so long. That sort of thing goes through your head. In at number 4, Days Gone By, Season 1, Episode 1. Yeah, the pilot's got to be on my top 10, and he's probably on a lot of people's top 10 best episodes as well, simply for the fact that the impactfulness of Rick waking up from a coma, stepped out of that room, and is like, what the fuck is happening? And wakes up basically in a post-apocalyptic world. And it's such an interesting watch because it's really like 28 Days Later. It is legit ripped off of 28 Days Later, and now tries to find his family, wants to know what's happening. But he struggles to understand this new world, sort of speak, and has to adapt pretty quickly. And Morgan helps him to adapt when he meets him in the street, and helps to show him how to deal with walkers, to the point where he kills his first walker and he's not sure about if this is right. These are still living creatures, and you're getting that conflictness that you don't get later on when Rick is dealing with zombies, or when anybody else for that matter is dealing with walkers and freaks. They deal with them in a different fashion, and I love that. I think that is completely unique to the first episode, because it's a look back at the first few days of somebody experiencing the post-apocalyptic world to later on in the show where they're experiencing walkers and how they deal with them. They're totally different because later on they don't think about it, and here Rick has to think about the logical reasons for doing it, and is this right? These people are still living, and the rest of it. And I think he here is still basically the most normal person going. He hasn't really adapted to that post-apocalyptic world yet. He hasn't, it's like early days of Rick before he goes unhinged and the leader that we see later down the line. And it's such an interesting watch, especially on a rewatch. And yeah, it really helps set off The Walking Dead. And I don't think The Walking Dead universe would be as good now without this great start that it had with this particular episode. In at number 3, The Next World, Season 6, Episode 10. Yep, I absolutely love this episode for me. Jesus' debut is one of the best debuts in a show that you will ever see. He's so entertaining, so funny, so unique. It's unbelievable because it just looks like a normal episode of a supply run of Rick and Daryl going on a supply run, grabbing in a few things after the zombies invaded in the last few episodes. I think it was such a great way for this to settle down and show, like, we're moving on. You've had the drama of No Way Out. Now it's time to move on from that. And this is such a uniquely special, funny episode in the midst of that. Because like you said, you've got Daryl and you've got Rick going out on a supply run. And when they stumble upon a gold mine of supplies, food, drink, whatever, they try to take the truck back. And then in comes Jesus, who debuts, tricks them and takes the van. And then you're thinking, oh my god, is this a new villain? No, he's just a normal character, which is later going to become quite an iconic character for the show and quite an important character for the show. But it's more time, he's just a nuisance for them too. But they find him later down the line because I think his tyre goes out. They track him down again, they chuck him out of the van, they deal with him, they tie him up, whatever, and then they drive away. But then they hear him on the roof. And again, he's becoming a nuisance. However, in the midst of the kerfuffle, the van ends up going into a nearby river/lake, and there goes all the resources to the bottom of the riverbed. And I think that was such a great moment. Looking at it, an important moment within the show, because none of the stuff with the Saviours probably would have bubbled up at the end of this season without Jesus' involvement, because obviously he takes them to the 3 communities after this part. In at number 2, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be, Season 7, Episode 1.
You can breathe. You can blink. You can cry. Hell, you're all gonna be doing that.
Yes, this is an impactful moment, the biggest moment within the Walking Dead history/universe. Simple reason being, this is Negan's real debut. This is him saying, I'm fucking here. Obviously, he did it at the end of the last episode. But this episode is where we get to see what he actually did at the end of that last episode, because it left it on a cliffhanger, because you knew he killed somebody, but who? This one shows you who he killed. And it shows you in a dramatic fashion of Rick being belittled. He's being abused by Negan. Like the axe scene, it feels like you're seeing Rick as a broken man, which you never thought you would see. He's not the Rick anymore from season 4 and season 5, where he's ruthless. He will do anything to save his people. He would have done that, but he was belittled to the point where 2 of his comrades, 2 of his people have just been killed in front of him, and he can do nothing but shed a tear and sit there and shut up and listen to what Negan's got to say. That was it. And I think that was such a dramatic fashion. That's where we really got to see how evil Negan is in this episode. When he kills Glenn and when he kills Abraham, which are moments which will live on in TV show history. And that shocks a lot of people. And it's not a nice episode to watch, like, in terms of entertainment. It's horrible, because we always want the heroes to come out on top. Sometimes we like a good villain like Negan, but at times it gets to the point where it's sort of like a little bit unbearable to watch, because it's so hard to watch one of your favourites like Glenn getting murdered in the way that he does and in the fashion that he does. But then again, you've got to look at an angle and think, nobody forgets about that moment. This has got to be the most impactful Walking Dead episode of all time, as this shakes Rick into a new version of Rick, the broken Rick that we see in season 7. This has an overlasting impact on the future of The Walking Dead from seasons which Negan plays a part in just being part of Alexandria later down the line. This was such an influential moment. They'll never be forgotten, and that's why it's got to be high up in my top 10 as well. In at number 1, here's Negan, season 10, episode 22.
You know, I never killed a man before tonight. It's the truth. Came close once.
For me, this might be one that a lot of people are familiar with and is a sitter for one of the greatest episodes of The Walking Dead. And for me, it has to be number 1. Simple reason being that we finally get to see what makes Negan tick. And we get to see why he went so unhinged and turned evil and turned the villain that we later see in the Walking Dead universe. And for me, it's a fantastic episode of seeing him become a PE teacher, from adapting to the apocalyptic world, to being the wearing of a leather jacket badass that he becomes later down the line, and walking around with a bat named Lucille. We see how all that comes to be, and it really starts with his wife, and because she has cancer, and in the apocalypse, just before the apocalypse happens, she ends up getting cancer, and he now has to keep up getting like the rest of the chemotherapy stuff so that she can stay alive. And in doing so, he has to go to one of these doctors that are driving around with a load of medical supplies and asking them for some chemotherapy stuff, and has heard about where they're going to be. In doing that though, he meets another group who want to know where these doctor people are so that he can track them down, kill them, whatever. But Negan is determined to get this this chemotherapy back to his wife, and ends up escaping and doing so. And he goes back and she's dead, and blames that gang of people for holding him up so he couldn't have that last moment with his wife and to be able to save her life. That moment, he changes from being this Negan, this nice, happy, smiling Negan, to being this other happy, smiling Negan, which is in a sixth sense, and is now going to whoop your fucking ass and kill you and torture you and be evil in that particular fashion, and bring up what is known as the Saviors, in which is a fantastic episode. If you ain't seen it, is one of the best episodes in the Walking Dead universe, and I think that is my favourite. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments down below. What is your favourite Walking Dead episodes? Is it in these top 10 that I've put together? Have you got another top 10 do you want to share? Let us know all that jazz down in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet seen our top 10 movies to watch in 2025, check that out right now.